meeting of the Humboldt County Association of Governments, and we'll call this meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Chair Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Jones.
Here.
Supervisor Madrone.
Present.
Mayor Burgell.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Here.
Councilmember West.
Here.
Councilmember Orr.
Here.
PAC member Ladwig.
Here.
PAC member Allstrand.
Here.
Thank you. And at this time, we will adjourn from as the HCOG board and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And our first item of business is public comment on non-agenda items. And I don't see any online or in person. So we will move to the consent calendar. I have 3 items: the approval of the meeting record for January 18th, approval of the Humboldt County LTF claim for fiscal year 23-24, and the fiscal year 24-25 TDA Act Local Transportation Fund apportionment. Does anybody wish to pull anything? And do we have any public comment on this item? I believe we have an email.
Yeah, your board did receive an email from Colin Fisk of Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. He is on the line, but I can just summarize. Regarding the local transportation fund claims, you'll see that in the claims that a portion of the funds that each jurisdiction doesn't need for transit purposes can then be applied to streets and roads. And for jurisdictions that do not provide transit, the entirety of their local transportation fund is essentially able to be used for streets and roads. That's been how our TDA guidelines have worked for many, many years. We are exploring other ways to look at this and make sure that we're, kind of prioritizing transit as much as possible. However, I will say that we do receive a lot of feedback from our technical advisory committee members that the money put towards streets and roads is also very, very essential for their budgets. So it is a bit of a balancing act there. But just the intent of the comments was to call attention to, the overall purpose of the TDA is essentially transit first. So I will say also the state is looking into having a task force related to the Transit Development Act, and so it may come down from the state level that we need to do it differently eventually. That task force that they've formed, I think, is going to wrap up within a couple years, so we may have some different guidance. But just to say that it is, an issue that's been raised, and we do look at that. However, these are in compliance with the current regulations.
All right, thank you. And there being no board comments or questions, can we get a motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar as delivered.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you. And we'll move to our action items. The fiscal year 24-25 overall work plan program draft and budget. And is there any comments or questions?
Give us ready for a staff report. If you can believe it, we're already looking at our draft budget for 24-25 fiscal year. The draft is due to Caltrans March 1st. So that is why it's before you this evening. Compared to last year, you'll see quite an increase in the kind of the bottom line number. The total budget for next fiscal year is $3,953,906. That's compared to about $2 million in our current fiscal year. And the big difference there is the grants that are going to be coming through HCOG. So specifically $1.7 million that will really pass through, and those are coming in and appearing as direct expenses in our budget. So although it kind of props up the budget and makes it look like much larger, it really is just funds that are being granted and then passed through to the receiving entities, primarily Humboldt Transit Authority and the We Are Up housing project. And then I will say kind of the theme for next fiscal year is going to be grant implementation. We have been fortunate to receive a number of grants, and they will be in full swing by next fiscal year. So the REAP 2.0, which is the micro transit for McKinleyville, and the We Are Up project, that will be in full swing, as well as we should be able to launch the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we got, the Regional Vision Zero Action Plan. We'll kind of just be launching probably around the time next fiscal year hits. And then we are already getting started on the Humboldt Multimodal and Vibrant Neighborhoods Planning Grant, but we'll continue that for the next couple years. So those are taking up a lot of our work effort. I will say that I used a strategy this year. We have match on all of those grants. And so I front loaded that match because we have some savings related to staff expenses. We're down a staff member compared to where we were last year. So I felt like it was safe to kind of front load the match, kind of reduce our liabilities for future years, especially just kind of with the volatility of the economy. Maybe that shores us up a little better. And then we are requesting, there was a typo in the staff report in terms of our request from the local transportation fund, which is our primary non-grant operating revenue. We're requesting $464,300, and that's compared to $500,000 last year. So what that means is that difference is essentially available to the jurisdictions and gets put into the local transportation fund formula, and will be divvied up through that process. And so, as I mentioned, we have some staff savings because we're down a position. And I tried to highlight the differences in the staff report. Certainly, if you have any specific questions on that, I'm happy to answer those. I think, the overall I wanted to share was just kind of that focus on grants. We don't have a whole lot of new work elements otherwise. And then just kind of that reduced request from the local transportation fund compared to the current fiscal year. So with that, I'll conclude and be happy to take any questions.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. On page 25, where you have the supplemental Eureka patrols for 200,000, is that the 101 corridor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to ask that we get some updates on those. I know that's not part of this issue, but, I do look forward to those. And so as long as it's part of our overall work program, I would love to see some updates on that.
Yeah. So just some clarification on your question. When you say the updates, is you're talking about specifically the patrols, not And so I will say we reserve this $200,000, make it available to the city of Eureka, but for well over a year now, they have not had the staffing capability to fulfill on any extra patrols. So that's essentially why we don't get the updates like we used to. However, that money is sitting there, it's waiting for them, and when they have the ability, they'll be able to take advantage of it and and benefit that corridor.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had was, let me see if I can find it. Okay, here it is. It's on page 62, and it's the Safe Route to Schools programs that we're a part of. Blue Lake is a part of that. And I understood that the city of Blue Lake was getting more than 1,500, but I may be wrong on that, so I'll have to double check with my city manager on that. But I know that we are in the process of working on that in Blue Lake, and it's quite a large project for us.
Okay, yeah, and we can see that may be. So these were contributions that Blue Lake is making. So when you see that 1,500, that's actually what Blue Lake has agreed to contribute overall for this grant, and that is the Humboldt Multimodal and Vibrant Neighborhoods Planning Grant. This is where we're going to be doing the level of traffic stress for several jurisdictions to see where there's where there's vulnerabilities and difficulties in terms of the connectivity for being a cyclist or a pedestrian. And then we do have a focus on safe routes to school. The particular project in here is actually an Arcata project. They, you see their contributions quite a bit more, and there'll be one focus of that. I will say overall for the safe routes to school within this same grant, there is a feasibility analysis looking at really figuring out how we could fund for the region a permanent safe routes to school coordinator. It's a position that's been sometimes sort of HCOG plays that role. Sometimes someone from maybe Office of Education has kind of played that role. Sometimes it's been public health, and often it's a task force of all. But it's something that's not. It's sort of like people pick it up as grants become available. It's not something that we have sustainable funding for. So that's something we're going to be looking into is, what entity would be the right entity to house a position like that? And if we could get that position, how would we keep it consistently funded? So that is one of the efforts that'll be coming out that I think would benefit, all safe routes to school projects throughout the whole county.
And Blue Lake Elementary feeds into Arcata High School, so maybe that's why there's that discrepancy there too, because we are one of the feeder schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? I would just say also that the speaker series I like the way you say to bring people into the community. So I just envision where community members can come and hear, see what our transportation system is, what the needs are, and become acquainted with what HCOG is and does. So.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really great opportunity, similar to when we brought Dan Burden. We had hundreds of people participating in that. It was really the most well-attended thing I think HCOG's ever done. So very well received. These will be specific for individual communities, much like that last effort. And really, we've got buy-in, through our technical advisory council, and they've all committed to leading these efforts in their individual jurisdictions. And so we'll be able to, really kind of pinpoint the need and what we need to be talking about in each space. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. And then, is there any public comment? I don't see any hands raised, but if not, we'll entertain a motion.
I will move for approval of the 24-25 draft OWP.
And it needs to be forwarded to Caltrans.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Piles of paper. We have no informational items at this time and no presentations. So by motion, we can reconvene as the HCOG board and approve the PAC recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. We are at the HCOG staff and PAC member reports, and first is our executive director's report.
Sure, I have just a couple things for you this evening. The first is that we have these long-awaited new call boxes that have finally been installed. So it took much longer than we thought it would between getting through the encroachment permits and just getting the equipment. Many of these new ones, I think there's about 9 of them. They're satellite call boxes, which we haven't operated before. Really beneficial in those areas, very much lacking cell service. So kind of a new piece of technology we're using. It took quite a while to get all the parts here, but they're actually being installed. The poles have been out there for a while, and then the sort of call box portion just got added to the ones on the 36 and then 96. Our contractor is here now, and even despite the weather, they will continue to work on those. And I will say, we already received one email from somebody located on Highway 96 thanking us, just really excited and kind of noting their story about the difficulty with no cell reception, and when they see an accident or something that is so many miles they have to go before they can, even get to a place where they can make a phone call to seek help. And so, just really good to know know that we're doing something that's being, well received so immediately, and that they're being noticed, and hopefully we'll get some use right away. So I just wanted to share that. And then in sort of less cheerful news, I just wanted to make the board aware we did have a break-in at the HCOG office last week. So I got the joy of coming in at 3:30 and meeting a very nice EPD officer who is very helpful. We are working with our landlord to shore up the windows. We didn't have any damage. We lost just one laptop and a few files, but nothing particularly, we don't have much that's confidential anyway, but, seemingly nothing confidential. And, the laptop, I'm sure is not making its way back to us. But just to make you all aware that did happen. We're dealing with it. We have a case with EPD, and, we're grateful to their assistance. And, also worked with the landlord to shore up the windows and, get some ring cams, things like that. So just a little wake up call for us that, to be diligent. I will say our alarm system, that's how we got notified. So that's good that we have it, and it worked out. So just very grateful that there wasn't, any damage. And then switching back to a happy note, I am leaving for vacation this evening. And so just for the next 2 weeks, Una, our senior planner, will be acting executive director while I'm out, able to make decisions. So we should have good coverage. Everybody's aware of what to do. But just if you're looking for me in the next couple of weeks, I will not be here. We have, Una will be able to respond if anything is needed. So that's it for me.
Yes.
I just have a comment. So the city of Eureka does have a grant program for SEPTED, which is environmental safety through environmental design. So I don't know if that might be an opportunity for you to reach out and have them at least come look at ways you might be able to change the exterior. You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Well, just glad everyone's safe. And our next item is Caltrans reports.
Thank you. Just a couple of updates. Last chance grade, there was a draft environmental document, Informational Public House, on January 24th. The review of the environmental document continues and prepare to compile responses. Upcoming activities include the final environmental document sometime between April and June of this year, and then regulatory agency coordination begins, and then coordination with project work groups and on the selection of the preferred alternatives within that same window of time. Fern Bridge, there'll be a full 40-hour closure on February 23rd, beginning around 8 p.m. The stakeholder engagement meeting will be held tentatively on March 11th, and then continued engagement during the project initiation document process follows that meeting. Oric, our Caltrans management met with community members in Oric this week to discuss future efforts on community-led vision for improvements in that community. Just wanting you to be aware of that. And then just some new staff in District 1. We have a new District Native American liaison, Jerome Washington. He's currently working on the Tribal Transportation Summit coming up this spring. We have a new public engagement coordinator, Megan Bruner. This person will be developing the Caltrans public engagement best practices document and will also be maintaining a stakeholder database. Our climate adaptation planning branch is in the process of hiring a hydrologist, and their focus will be on sea level rise. And also we're hiring a full-time transit planner, and they'll start on April 2nd. So we're really excited about that. The fiscal year 24-25 Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program closed a few weeks ago, and just to give you an idea of how competitive it is this cycle, we in District 1 received a total of 7 applications this round and 1 application from HCOG, so announcements will happen sometime around June of this year. And that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Yes, Supervisor Madron.
Yeah, it was a wonderful meeting in Oric with Caltrans staff and the community, and shout out to Tom Fitzgerald and staff. They were alerted to something Tom didn't even know about, and there's actually a pathway underneath the bridge that goes over Redwood Creek that was in disrepair along with the fence, and they got on it within just a couple of days and got that all cleaned up and repaired. And that was really great to see that response, so shout out to Tom and the crew. Also, a lot of talk about how to help Oric have better traffic safety through the downtown, because everybody just sees it as a highway. You got people going through 50, 60 miles an hour. And there's a lot of talk about the success of the Willow Creek project from years ago and how that really has changed the downtown of Willow Creek tremendously in a positive way, not only for traffic safety, but also the trees and the bulb outs and all that. So very much appreciative of Caltrans' efforts in that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think following that meeting already, I had a meeting with traffic safety and just brainstorming ideas. So the ball's rolling. Thanks.
Any other? No? Well, thank you. And thank you for getting the pathway under the bridge taken care of too that quickly, all the staff. And now we come to the HTA report.
As I'm a pinch hitter, I don't have a report, so you have the gift of time.
Well, sometimes that's really appreciated. Well, any board member reports? Yes.
I attended the CalCog meeting last week, so I thought I would just bring some updates as to what was talked about. The reiterated the goals that came out of the strategic board session that we had. I think that was in December. And so the main focus for the staff at CalCog this year is, and it's interesting because it all lines up with what we've been talking about here regionally. So I think that that's interesting and great when there is synchronicity amongst that. Housing, and so focusing on RENA reform, also the REAP funding and the issues with that. CalCog is working on strategies to highlight the importance of that funding and how they might really put pressure to get it, back out to people. So, and then also the development of housing trust funds, which is something that we're working on also. Public education on the gas tax replacement, because that seems to be coming a little bit quicker now. And then electrification and hydrogenation in rural areas. So like exploring what are the needs related to the grid as regions help transition to that. So we're not, again, the only ones with grid capacities. That is also a statewide problem. And apparently the Southern California Associations of Government is sponsoring a bill that asks for more transparency in how the RENA numbers are calculated. So those were the highlights.
Well, thank you. Any other board member reports? Well, I think we've reached stasis. So at this time, we will adjourn as the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board. Thank you.